So, hi, Steve. How are you?
Hello, Joe. I'm doing well in the south of France, and there's some nice cool weather after some pretty hot weather. So good to be here.
I'm really, really pleased. Thanks ever so much for joining me today to talk about what I think is a really important subject in terms of the whole world of organizational performance and leadership. And the
Yeah.
subject is purpose-driven leadership. So, look, you're a pretty experienced business guy with a track record of success. And now you've moved into the world of coaching and consulting. I was just wondering, what first got you excited or interested in the subject of purpose-driven leadership?
Yeah, good question. The key piece, I think, for quite often is sort of is a shock, and the shock that I got was in 2008 and 2009 for the global economic crisis, and there was a silver lining in that shock because it gave me an opportunity to kind of stand back and reflect on what was needed to change in the world and change in me and the role that I was playing in it. And so I started doing a lot of research and a lot of reading and speaking to people. And I came across a book that sort of changed my view on things, which was Daniel Pink's book called Drive,
Yeah.
The Surprising Truth, about what really motivates us. And it's not about money, right? And the essence of his research really boils down to sort of three findings. And it's that people are motivated by autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Autonomy being that sort of desire to be self-directed, because that increases engagement over compliance, which most organizations tend to work towards compliance. And then he talks about mastery, which is that urge to get better at your skills. And funnily enough, one of the reasons many people leave organizations is because they're not being developed enough, or they don't feel they're being developed enough.
Yeah.
And the key one for me, which as a CEO at the time really sort of caught me, was purpose, because as a CEO, that's my core role, is to defend the purpose of the company.
Yeah.
But he was talking about personal purpose, the desire to do something that has meaning and is important. And in the global economic crisis, right, he was talking about this concept of, businesses that only focus on profit without valuing purpose end up with poor customer service, unhappy employees, and just basically don't do well. And so it's that combination that happened. And as a CEO at the time, and in the business I was leading, I decided to embark on a whole bunch of training and discovery sessions with some of my senior team members to dig into this purpose piece a little bit deeper. And we did it to understand, we redefined our company's purpose and started looking into our individual purpose statements for ourselves. And we wanted to tie the two together to drive growth, and almost kind of like a rebirth. And why were we doing this? Because we wanted to find our way forward in what was a crazy, crazy world at the time. And I think it's the first time I came across the term VUCA, which was volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and what's the other, ambiguity.
Yeah.
And so anyway, we did all this stuff. And, in 2009, our performance was poor. And within 18 months, we rebuilt our bench strength. Our profits were back up to pre-crisis levels, and our employee SAT scores were way up. So yeah, that's how I first got into it.
That's really interesting. I'm particularly interested in sort of the journey of where the business was, the fact that you kind of were reflecting and thinking about what was needed in the organization and what was needed amongst people, and the context, that whole VUCA context. I'm just wondering, why, after that experience, why do you think defining purpose, leaders' purpose, is so important to leadership today?
Yeah, interestingly, it's a really good question, because if you look at it from a psychology or a psychologist point of view, they say that when you know your purpose, your why it matters, you create a pathway for greater well-being, and you're better able to thrive in a VUCA world. And so organizations tend to have their mission statement, their purpose, but individual leaders tend not to. And as a leader, certainly all leaders, CEOs, and I was a CEO at one point in time, our role really is to be that shepherd, to define, promote, and protect a company's purpose. And Simon Sinek, he said it famously in one of his sort of top YouTube videos. People do not buy what you do; they buy why you do it.
Sure.
Right? And the interesting piece for me is that while leaders can articulate their company's vision and mission, or call it their purpose, there seems to be very few leaders that are able to articulate their own purpose. And I was reading a paper from Harvard Business Review that said that less than 20% are able to articulate it,
Yeah.
and even fewer have a written statement. So, I kind of feel like the sweet spot is, for today's leader at least, is finding that intersection of these three circles: the company's vision and mission, so that's one circle, and then their role, and then their purpose. And where those three circles intersect, that's the sweet spot, and that's where leadership impact goes right up. The other reason purpose is important in today's world is that it's the realization that millennials are searching for something different in the work world. And there's lots of written material about it. And by and large, they're seeking to work for companies where they can deliver something greater than themselves, right? They're seeking Daniel Pink's purpose. And the final piece in this is, and we're seeing this, and there's, again, a fair amount of writing coming out of it. Frederick Laloux might be one of them too to look at, is that this traditional top-down hierarchical business model is faltering, right? And it's just not delivering the results that people are expecting or once used to get from that model. And in its place, because of millennials and what's changing, is emerging a we-centered leadership model, where people find work meaningful through a shared vision, a shared purpose. So hopefully I've answered your question there, Joe.
Yeah, very much so, Steve. Thank you. Something that struck me from what you said is this, the last part around we, the whole notion of we. Because ultimately, any enterprise is a human enterprise, and there is a requirement in the bigger the organization, the more of the requirement around team working, cross-functional collaboration, and being able to connect the business in order to deliver. And I think one of the things I found in my own practice, and this is well documented now in all the research, that team purpose is a really significant thing. And very often what you find is that when you ask the question, what is the purpose of this team? They very often talk about the function, so we are here because we are the IT team, or we're the finance team, whatever. And actually helping teams find a higher purpose, why do they exist? Why do they operate together beyond the requirements or the goals of that function, actually transforms the way that they actually work together, because it becomes like a beacon for them. So I thought that was a really interesting point you're making there.
Yeah.
But talking about that, so just define for me, what is a purpose statement?
Okay. Yeah. Actually, we should have maybe spoken about that right from the start, but good question. Perhaps I should answer that question by actually saying what a purpose statement isn't, right? It's not about your role or your job title or what you know or even what you do, right? It's this, it's really about who you are being. So who you are being when leading, right? And the climate that you create as a result. And the climate, call that impact, because that's what leadership's all about. It's about creating impact. and it is about who you're being, not just when you're leading, but also in your personal life. It transcends both. And I suppose you could sum it up by saying it's how you show up as a leader consistently, over time. So it's about your positive core deep down inside, which transcends time. And there's a professor at at Harvard. She's the founder of the Institute of Coaching, Carol Kaufman, and she captured it beautifully by saying, what you know is important, what you do is important and matters, and who you are is everything, right? So purpose is all about what makes you special and unique and valuable. It's what makes you tick at home and at work. It's your inner magic, right? It brings all your values and passions and strengths all into one place. And capturing the inner magic in a few powerful words, so purpose statement, like you do with a company's mission statement, right? That's the key to raising your purpose statement into your consciousness. And once you're aware of that, it allows you to then tap into your true potential and true power. And when you master your inner magic and you honor your purpose at work and at home, life just becomes intensely rewarding, right? Every day. So, the question I would ask you is, what would be possible for you and some of your clients perhaps if you felt fully alive and fulfilled every day at work and at home?
It's a great coaching question, Steve. Thank you. I'm going to park it because one of the things we know about the way that we operate in terms of our engagement with clients, you and I, is that part of the story is, as you say, raising that awareness and enabling people to, in this context, to formulate and really hone down their purpose statement.
Yeah.
But I was just wondering, okay, let's assume I've got one. Okay, so I've done all the hard work, all the hard thinking, the soul searching, and I feel I've got to a stage where I've really buttoned it down and I have my purpose statement. What do I actually do with it?
Great question again. Well, fortunately, certainly from a leadership perspective, we're really talented at creating business plans and bringing ideas to life. And that same talent is needed to transform, your purpose statement into an action plan, right? So this is all about visioning your future aspirations, from a business and personal life perspective, and breaking these down into bite-sized pieces, bite-sized chunks that are aligned to your purpose statement. And when you do that, you're basically adding value over time. So successful delivery of your action plan really boils down to always honoring your purpose statement and using it as a guide. That's right. The important, using it as a guide, your shepherd. And I referred to that concept earlier on as well, to really make decisions in your VUCA world against your aspirational plan, which gets broken down into different pieces.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, is having it as a guide or a reference point for the decisions that we make as leaders, or any leader might make, given that, it's as you say, it's a VUCA world, things are changing, it's volatile, and sometimes they're tricky to get your head around. And I like the notion of having that reference point, because I think there are loads of connections here with developing into more authentic leadership. So I'm not saying that individuals aren't authentic, they probably are, but I think purpose links us up, in my mind at least, beautifully with the notion of becoming even more authentic in the way that we engage with our people, teams, maybe our customer base, and the relationships we'd really, really like to have in our business, professional, and social worlds.
Sure.
Let me ask you a sort of a side question, I think, because obviously you're an experienced developer, coach, etc. And just as you were speaking, I was wondering, leaders will probably have lots of different ways in which they might develop themselves. There might be lots of range of development opportunities. But I'm thinking in particular, how do you see, from your own experience, how do you see coaching fitting in with all of this?
Yeah. The key point here, really, I think at the end of the day, is that we're all really, really good at recognizing other people's strengths and their weaknesses, right? And then telling them what they need to do to be more impactful. And I can think of that back in, as a leader, when I was thinking about performance reviews and writing them out and, sharing what people had to do, or 360-degree reviews and the advice, that we even shout out at our sports heroes when we're watching them on TV. They could have done it this way. So where we're not so good is at recognizing our own strengths, but especially our own weaknesses, and identifying what adaptive leadership behaviors would best serve us to have true impact, a greater impact. And that's why athletes have coaches, right? And increasingly, that's why leaders have executive coaches. It's also this whole thing of not being able to recognize ourselves sometimes. That's why they say that the worst place to be in the world is in your own mind by yourself. And an executive coach, really, what they do and what I do is, provides a mirror, right, to the leader. So they can see the movies that are going around in their mind, and they can start closing the reality gap between others in the world and the world around them. So, because we're mostly blind to ourselves, it's almost impossible to develop a purpose statement without an executive coach or without support from somebody. So bottom line is great leadership requires constant inner development. And an executive coach really is one of the key ingredients to successful development for a leader. So that's the bottom line.
Yeah, I think you make some really fabulous points here. From my own sort of development, professional development as a coach, I'm more and more convinced the more people I deal with and work as a coach with, I think everyone needs a coach sometime, and maybe more than once in your life, kind of thing.
Hey, Joe, I have a coach, right?
Yeah. Well, good. I have a coach. I'm supervising.
There we go.
I've been a coach for nearly 25 years, and I've constantly. That's part of our profession. But look, first of all, let me get my priorities straight. A big thank you to you for opening up this subject. It's such a massive subject, Steve. I think that we've touched the surface, and I hope that we've engaged in some interesting ideas around this whole notion of purpose-driven leadership. Any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, well, if you want to learn more about it, give me a call. My name's at the bottom of the screen there, or if you want to know how I go about doing it, I'd be happy to discuss that with people who've watched this video.
That's terrific. Thanks so much, Steve. Have a great day and speak to you soon.
Thanks very much, Joe. Cheers.